Now let's talk about the committees. There are 4 main committees that we will discuss: the Rules Committee, the Credentials Committee, the Nominating Committee, and the Reference Committee. First, let's start with the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee basically clarifies all of the working rules for the HOD and then disseminates this information to AMSA members prior to the National Convention. It's composed of the National President, the Vice President of Internal Affairs, and the Secretary. Overall, they're responsible for the rules of the HOD that pertain to the other committees, elections, delegate participation, and basically anything else that's pertinent to the HOD. Each year, the rules tend to be very similar from year to year. In detail, the Rules Committee sets method of delegate registration, the seating of the delegates in the House of Delegates, the designation of the ex officio members, the use of proxy votes during business sessions, the different voting procedures for the election of national officers, the length of speeches and debates, the procedure by which motions and resolutions are introduced for consideration by the HOD, and special rules for the functioning of the HOD. The rules report must be approved by the HOD at the beginning of the HOD business sessions each year. Now let's talk about the Credentials Committee. The Credentials Committee serves to maintain the official role of those entitled to vote in the official business sessions of the HOD, and they're often likened to like the registration desk at your hotel. The committee is there to check you into the HOD as a delegate, as an ex officio member, or special participant. That's where the word credentials comes in. Delegates are given special badges to ensure that no votes are misrepresented and that business can carry on with the presence of a quorum. And a quorum is the minimum number of delegates that is necessary to conduct business. Quorum is important as no one would want a handful of delegates deciding what more than 100 delegates has the responsibility to decide. So you might see some people running around outside saying, "We need to get quorum, we need to get quorum." It's most likely somebody from the Credentials Committee making sure that quorum has been met in the HOD for voting. You'll also see the Credentials Committee right as you arrive at the entrance to the HOD sessions at convention. Feel free to ask them any questions you have and let them know they're appreciated. Next, let's talk about the Nominations Committee. The Nominations Committee is doing its job best if you don't notice what they're doing. They're basically a behind-the-scenes committee that's charged with assisting and overseeing the electoral process and the rules that the House of Delegates and national elections have. This can include management of the applications and verification of applicants that they all submitted their documentation, overseeing the balloting and elections. They can also be involved with training candidates and members in the Code of Election Conduct, and they're really there to enforce the Code of Conduct. The Code of Election Conduct is incredibly significant in the election of national leadership. AMSA maintains a strict no-campaign policy to prevent any positive or negative influence over elections. Candidates especially, but all members must be aware of their explicit or perceived influence over the elections process, and the Nominations Committee oversees that conduct is maintained. The full Code of Conduct can be found in the CBIA, which was posted on an earlier slide. And finally, let's discuss the reference committees, or REFCOMs as they're known in AMSA. Often the REFCOMs tend to be a very confusing committee for new AMSA members or for new HOD participants. Basically, REFCOMs serve to collect and synthesize testimony from across AMSA regarding the different resolutions that are going to be before the House of Delegates. They have to be impartial in this synthesis of testimony on each resolution, and that's to ensure that all the parties and the voices are fairly heard and the content is not distorted between the reception and the testimony to the HOD. When you think about it, reference committees actually save a lot of time for the HOD that might have otherwise been carried out in debate. They read and review the resolutions before they're even debated in the HOD, and then they make recommendations to the HOD based on the testimony that they have heard. If you have written a resolution, you are greatly encouraged to go to the REFCOM session to provide your testimony. For a resolution to be debated on the HOD floor, it has to be extracted. Otherwise, the HOD will usually vote to accept RefCom's recommendation en bloc. In practice, RefComs may not even give their recommendations to the HOD in person. At the start of business session on that Saturday morning, delegates will see a list or an agenda of all the resolutions for that session, along with the recommendations. The recommendations can then be voted on en bloc by the HOD, which is a simple way of passing all the recommended business as is without any debate. Again, if debate is desired, and that's usually because there's a disagreement with the RefCom's recommendations, then a resolution must be extracted in order to change the fate of that resolution and to save it from the recommended outcome. So if you strongly disagree with any of RefCom's recommendations, it's up to you to extract that resolution to make it part of the main items of business for debate. This again will be part of the agenda, but set aside. You must extract a motion before business begins, and you can do that by talking to the Credentials Committee, the Chair, or the Vice Chair. At the beginning of business, you may also call for an extraction when the Chair motions to adopt the agenda or hear any requests for extraction. If you have any questions on how to extract a resolution or how the Reference Committee further works, please feel free to email secretary@amsa.org or vpia@amsa.org, and they will be able to answer your questions in a more detailed manner. Here we have a mock HOD agenda or a slate. You can see here that there are different motions, the measure that that motion is referring to, the recommendation passed down by the RefCom, and what the agenda item number is. There are different possibilities that the Reference Committee can make. Recommend that the resolution be adopted, they can recommend it to be rejected, they can recommend that the resolution be adopted as amended. In that case, they would create amendments from the testimony heard during the open session. They can also give no recommendation. For example, if the testimony is split, they would only represent pros and cons. They can also recommend to refer the resolution to an appropriate committee. Usually that would be referred to the Board of Trustees for further evaluation, if more information about a subject is needed before a decision can be made by the House of Delegates. The Reference Committee can also recommend that the resolution is filed, meaning that no action is needed at this time. So you can see here in this mock slate that we have here, we have 3 different types of recommendations on the 3 different motions. So now that you've heard all about the different committees, it's time for you to volunteer to serve on these committees. If you're interested in volunteering, the applications are due January 15th, 2012. There is a reminder that you must be at convention the morning of March 10th for the HOD and the morning of March 9th for training. All applicants for the committees will be notified of their status before January 27th. And one of the perks of being a committee volunteer, you'll receive free registration to convention in return for your service. So volunteer now. This year's HOD debate 2012 will be March 10th, which is a Saturday of convention. Every year, the HOD uses Robert's Rules of Order, and there are lots of cheat sheets available all throughout the HOD since there are many rules and details that often get confusing, and the cheat sheets really help you know what to say when. This year, there's a little bit of change in the HOD, is that we're going green. This year, all delegates must bring their laptops, but they will receive a free AMSA flash drive that's going to be preloaded with all the HOD materials and will be available at no additional cost on Saturday morning at the credentials table to all of the registered delegates when they enter the HOD. That jump drive will include an HOD resolution spreadsheet, candidate information, all of the resolutions, and the Robert's Rules of Order cheat sheets, and anything else that you might need throughout the HOD. The HOD is really exciting, it's fun, and it's really fast-paced. It's a wonderful opportunity to see how AMSA makes its policy and how the policy-making body of AMSA really works. In the morning, there are speeches and elections for the Board of Trustees. You really want to come engaged, ready to hear their speeches, because voting for your national leadership is incredibly important. The afternoon on that Saturday is all of the resolutions. If you've written a resolution, or if you're a delegate, or if you just want to observe, this is a great opportunity for you to see how all of the resolutions get passed or not passed through our House of Delegates. So here's a timeline and an overview of all the dates that I've already mentioned throughout the video. But just to review, submit a resolution, the deadline is January 8th. To be on the committee, the application deadline is January 15th. All of the resolutions will be posted by February 10th. Delegate registration deadline is February 26th. The training for all of the committees is March 9th. And then the HOD again is March 10th. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact me, Nida Degasis, at secretary@amsa.org, or our Vice President of Internal Affairs, Liz Wiley, at vpia@amsa.org. Well, we hope that we've helped you understand how the HOD works, all the different players in the HOD, what the CBIA and PPP are, how to change them, and just how much fun we all have in the HOD. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. I would also like to extend a thank you to these individuals whom without this video could not be made.